Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Wednesday, the 31st of July in London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, Hamas says Israel has killed its political leader in an airstrike inside Iran.
The Bank of Japan hikes interest rates to 0.25% and cuts bond buying in a significant policy shift.
Plus, we'll have to increase taxes. Rachel Reeves concedes difficult decisions are ahead in the UK's October budget.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Hamas says Israel has killed its political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. Haniyeh was in Tehran for the inauguration of Iran's new president on Tuesday. In a statement, Hamas, an EU and US designated terrorist group, said he was killed in an airstrike on his residence. The Israeli military declined to comment. Speaking from Jerusalem, Bloomberg's Dan Williams says the incident will have come as a shock.
Hamas, really, with this unprecedented attack, it's had attacks on its leaders before. This would be the first, to my knowledge, at least published, of a major Hamas leader on Iranian soil. And Hamas will certainly be doing its recalculations. It's worth noting here that Israel so far has not confirmed this attack.
Dan Williams speaking there. Haniyeh was based in Qatar and had been a key go-between in ongoing ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas. His death follows an Israeli strike on Beirut last night, targeting a senior Hezbollah commander. That attack was a response to a rocket assault that killed 12 young people in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights over the weekend.
Now to central bank news. The Bank of Japan has raised interest rates to around 0.25% and unveiled plans to reduce bond buying. JGB purchases will be reduced by 400 billion yen per quarter, with a target of 3 trillion yen in the first 3 months of 2026. It shows Governor Kazuo Ueda's determination to normalise policy, and it fueled speculation that one more hike may be coming this year. Standard Chartered's head of fixed income strategy, Manpreet Gill, says it's a hawkish move, even if markets didn't respond that way immediately.
These expectations have been building, but there's also the element that I think the inflation forecasts have been trimmed a little bit. So if we're trying to explain what's happening in the yen, I think the combination sort of works out there. But I think longer term thing is really a signal that there's willingness to hike rates. It's going in the opposite direction of most other major central banks. So for the yen, look, the short-term move might very well be a pullback, but we think we can get a much stronger yen from here.
Manpreet Gill there discussing market reaction to the BOJ move. On inflation, the Bank of Japan notes that risks are skewed to the upside, a sign that they're seeing that virtuous cycle coming through.
HSBC has announced a $3 billion share buyback as its latest results blew past estimates. The bank's pre-tax profit for the second quarter rose to $8.9 billion, more than $1 billion higher than expected. Outgoing CEO Noel Quinn told Bloomberg he was in a good mood for his final earnings report in the role.
Listen, I'm pleased not only for our shareholders but also for the 200,000 colleagues around the world who have made this possible to deliver a financial performance this strong. I'm pleased that the way that they've handled the past 5 years, the work they've done, the transformation, and the results today are testament to the work that they've put in.
Quinn added the bank's future business environment will be shaped by the path of interest rates and the outcomes of elections.
Microsoft shares fell after its cloud revenue missed, disappointing investors dubious about AI gains. The tech giant's cloud computing service revenue rose 29% in the fourth quarter. That was slower than the previous quarter and predicted to be slower again next quarter. Many of Microsoft's corporate customers are only just starting to use new AI assistants. CEO Satya Nadella told analysts that the company hopes that it will turn into a big revenue flow in future.
Copilot customers increased more than 60% quarter over quarter. Feedback has been positive, with majority of enterprise customers coming back to purchase more seats.
Nadella has been infusing Microsoft's product line with AI technology from partner OpenAI. Microsoft shares fell about 4% in extended trading, pairing earlier losses of as much as 9.1%. It is still 12% higher, though, on the year.
The UK Chancellor says taxes will have to go up in her autumn budget. Earlier this week, Rachel Reeves set out a £22 billion shortfall in the British government's finances. Speaking to John Sopel on the Newsagents podcast, she was asked if that made tax rises in the autumn inevitable.
Look, I think that we will have to increase taxes in the budget. But
so inheritance tax, capital gains tax, pension reform are on the cards?
Well, we will have a budget on the 30th of October, and ahead of that budget, we will have a forecast.
The UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves there on the Newsagents podcast. She also doubled down on the Labour manifesto commitment of no VAT, national insurance or income tax increases.
To US politics, Kamala Harris has wiped out Donald Trump's poll lead in 7 battleground states. A wave of enthusiasm for the vice president has swept key regions, including Arizona and Pennsylvania, among young black and Hispanic voters. This, according to the latest Bloomberg polling. Now the presumptive Democratic candidate has set her sights on a debate with her Republican rival.
I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
Kamala Harris there speaking during a campaign rally in Georgia. The latest Bloomberg survey shows her capturing 48% of voters to 47% for Trump, a stronger showing than the 2-point deficit for President Joe Biden before he dropped out of the race. Those numbers suggest that Harris has a shot at reassembling the voter coalition that propelled President Barack Obama to the White House. But the presidential race remains close. Across the surveyed swing states, overall the gap between the candidates is within the poll's statistical margin of error.
At least 39 police officers have been injured following violent disorder in Southport, where a vigil was held to remember 3 young girls killed in Monday's knife attack. Cars were set on fire and bricks thrown at a local mosque, with protesters also heard chanting far-right slogans. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has been reacting.
Violent attacks from thugs on the street who show no respect for a grieving community, and it's a total disgrace.
5 children remain in critical condition following the stabbing. Last night's disorder is believed to have been fuelled by speculation around a 17-year-old suspect currently in police custody. Well, in a moment we'll bring you more on that news of the killing of the Hamas leader in Iran, plus more on the Bank of Japan decision as well. But just an update on a story we've been talking about all week from the Olympics in Paris. The triathlon will go ahead with the swimming in the Seine today. There was testing of the water at 3:20 a.m, which determined that the water quality had improved enough to allow it to take place. So the women's race will happen first this morning at 8 a.m. Then the men's race, which had been scheduled for yesterday but postponed until today, will go ahead at 10:45 a.m. Paris authorities have spent €1.4 billion cleaning up the Seine for this event. So that is something that will be much anticipated by those organising the Olympics.
There was huge disappointment yesterday when it wasn't going to go ahead, and real worries in that community of triathlons that it would have a real dent actually on their revenues and on their kind of, I suppose, fame and what they take away from the Olympics. So there was a lot of disappointment.
Yes, that's one event that will be going ahead in Paris today. Let's bring you more now in the breaking news this morning that Hamas says Israel has killed its political leader Ismail Haniyeh in an airstrike on Iran. Our Horizons Middle East anchor Jemana Brissett joins us now for more. Jemana, good morning. What do we know?
Yes, well, a lot of events have happened in the Middle East in the last 24 hours, but let's just stick to the killing of Ismail Haniyeh. So early this morning, Hamas announced that Israel had killed its political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, in an airstrike at around 2 a.m. local time. Local media reporting that both he and his bodyguards were killed in the attack. And Haniyeh is usually based in Qatar, but he happened to be in Iran for the inauguration of Iran's new president, Mr. Pezeshkian, who was accepting the inauguration yesterday. Now, per local Iranian media, Iran says it's still investigating the assassination of Haniyeh, the results to be announced soon. We have had no official commentary yet from Israel regarding the airstrike, but the reactions from some of the regional leaders are coming through. Turkey, for example, have put out a statement saying they're condemning the killing of Hamas's political leader, saying that the Haniyeh murder aims to regionalize the war in Gaza And the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has also come out with this statement strongly condemning the assassination, considering it a cowardly, this is a quote, a cowardly act and a dangerous development.
Yeah, indeed. We're following all of these breaking news lines, especially from the foreign ministry spokesman in Iran, saying that Haniyeh's blood will never go to waste, that the Israeli attack is being investigated by authorities. This according to Iran. So as you say, the reaction now coming in, and the bigger picture, what might this mean for Gaza ceasefire talks that have been ongoing? Obviously, Haniyeh was this key figure, key go-between.
Exactly.
What do we extrapolate from it?
Well, Caroline, I think there are two things that you need to consider. The first is that this happened on Iranian soil. So that's something to bear in mind, given the rhetoric and the increasing amount of hostility in words between Israel and Iran. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about that tit-for-tat retaliation between Iran and Israel directly. So one of the big questions is whether or not Iran feels the need to respond accordingly as well. Given that it is a new president, today is President Pezeshkian's first day in office, he will have to think about the formulation of that response. The second, to your point, is that Ismail Haniyeh was one of the leading spokesmen on Hamas's side in these ceasefire negotiations. He would have played a very active role over the last couple of weeks, as we've been reporting and talking about. There's been a lot of push diplomatically from the US, from Qatar, from Egypt to get the ceasefire deal over the line. With the absence of Ismail Haniyeh, that raises a big question about who exactly will be representing Hamas and speaking on behalf of Hamas as these talks continue. And whether or not these talks are going to continue is a big question. We just don't know at this point.
OK, Jemana Bersetchi, our Horizons Middle East anchor, thank you very much for joining us with the latest on that story.
Now, let's go to Japan next, where the central bank has raised interest rates by 15 basis points to 0.25%. It has also cut its bond buying programme in half over the next couple of years. Bloomberg's Paul Jackson, who leads our team of economists and government reporters in Japan, joins us now from Tokyo. Good morning, Paul. Good to have you on the programme. Markets had been expecting a hike from the Bank of Japan, although there'd been some uncertainty. Talk us through the details of the decision.
Well, I think in the run-up to today's decision, there'd been a kind of split view among markets and economists about whether they would go ahead with the rate hike or not. And I think really this centres on the idea of Governor Ueda. Is he Governor Ueda the economist, or is he Governor Ueda the normalizer of policy? And let's face it, Japan's policy has been out on the experimental fringes of global central bank policymaking over the years. All kinds of experimental measures have been in use. And since Ueda took the helm last year, he's been leading a march back to normality. And this is the latest example of that. And he hasn't just done one thing today. He's done two things, both the cutting of the bond program, which I would say was largely in line with expectations. The initial pace perhaps a bit slower. They're reaching the destination of 3 trillion a little bit faster than expected. And then the rate hike. We did have some local media reports overnight suggesting that a rate hike was in the works. So I think by the time we got to the decision this morning, I think the scales had tipped in favour of a rate hike coming.
We also got new inflation and GDP projections from the Bank of Japan as well. What do they tell us about the path ahead for the Japanese economy and the hints of what happens to rates next?
Well, I think those forecasts really keep us on the path of further interest rate hikes, because inflation is seen staying around 2% over the coming years. We did see a slight bumping down of the forecast for this fiscal year. That's because government energy subsidies are going to be reintroduced. So that's going to obviously bring the inflation rate down a little bit this year, and then consequently when they stop next year the inflation will go up a bit. But putting the technicalities to one side, essentially we are over the BOJ's 2% target or around there for the next 3 years or so. So the BOJ said if the forecasts materialise as expected, it can keep raising interest rates. So I think there's more to come, and this double move today suggests that UEDA is very much interested in getting back to normality.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.